I think that today, in as far as answering the macro of like what the push pull is on pricing, I look at this in a very specific way, which is ultimately there's three key levers that will determine A, your price upfront, B, your ongoing price, and the level of client retention you're going to have. And to me, those three things are brand, the actual price that you charge, and your service level. And service, there's many things built in service level. I'm not going to get into those. Brand is going to determine how much you can charge initially. So your brand versus price model, like if you look at these things as like on a graph of like 0 to 10, if your brand is ahead of your price, it's easy to get the initial sale because your brand is great. You have great case studies. You're positioned well. Your ICP is clear. The benefits of you are clear. The risk mitigation is there. Like that's all part of brand and its implied element. If your price is lower than that, you're a great deal. You're going to close a lot of deals at a high percentage. And if you're too high percentage, you're probably too underpriced. That's a different conversation. However, once you actually land the client, the brand is going to melt away because that's initial.
Everyone, today we are joined by Nick Avaria. He's a serial agency entrepreneur who has scaled multiple agencies past 7 and 8 figures, buying and selling 7 along the way. He has merged leadership teams and cultures and now helps agency owners escape burnout and build highly profitable, scalable businesses. Still in the trenches as an agency owner, Nick brings real-world systems and data discipline for people, accountability, and building true client lifetime value. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Thanks for having me.
So one of the things that I think is really vital here is that there's like these different kind of stages of growth, really, as we were talking about in the pre-recording. But there's this kind of like we are doing more, we have more clients, but yet we are less profitable. And revenue grows, margins shrink, things feel more chaotic. And so to start off the conversation, I'm curious to say, how do you look at that problem to like start to even diagnose the agency of like, what is the area that we need to focus on and what are the considerations that you're making at that initial stage?
This is like, I think everybody's experiencing this. So I don't think it's any news to anybody that there have been more agencies launched and founded in the last like 5 to 10 years than any other time in history. Like this is sort of obvious. This is also obvious by the fact that 10 years ago, only 15 to 20% of agencies were specialized in either A, some sort of platform, or B, some sort of industry, whereas today that number has inverted. So the 80-20 is now going the other way. And this is actually like people that used to be category leaders are now one of many in the specialization. And like this is the downward pressure on price. Now, I think that today, in as far as answering the macro of like what the push pull is on pricing, I look at this in a very specific way, which is ultimately there's three key levers that will determine A, your price upfront, B, your ongoing price, and the level of client retention you're going to have. And to me, those three things are brand, the actual price that you charge, and your service level. And service, there's many things built in service level. I'm not going to get into those. Brand is going to determine how much you can charge initially. So your brand versus price model, like if you look at these things as like on a graph of like 0 to 10, if your brand is ahead of your price, it's easy to get the initial sale because your brand is great. You have great case studies. You're positioned well. Your ICP is clear. The benefits of you are clear. The risk mitigation is there. Like that's all part of brand and its implied element. If your price is lower than that, you're a great deal. You're going to close a lot of deals at a high percentage. And if you're too high percentage, you're probably too underpriced. That's a different conversation. However, once you actually land the client, the brand is going to melt away because that's initial. Now it's about the service. And your relationship of service to price is the delta one way or another. So let me be clear. This delta, this differential between price and service is either means you're undercharging, right? And you're retaining clients for a long time because you're undercharging, your price is well below your service level, right? Or you churn clients quickly because your service level is below your pricing level. So these things have to be in concert. Now, if you underprice your price versus your service and you're trying to do like a land and expand model, that's okay, right? Because you have upsells baked in, you have a journey model of your potential customers and how they're going to buy more services from you. That's fine, especially if your brand isn't as good as your service, which I mean, I think is often the case in agencies because like the cobbler's kids have no shoes, right? So generally our brands aren't as good as our service. And so we need to actually be upselling in order to get the full value of the service that we're providing. We're generally providing two-way glove of service versus the price that we're charging. So we have to upsell somehow. Again, the delta is price higher than service equals churn. Price is lower than service, money being left on the table, but good retention. But at what cost?
So let's talk about service for a second, because here's a thing that I see happen quite a lot. There's the opinion of a lot of agency owners that the idea of service is the level of the creative output versus the impact to the client. So can we talk a little bit about what and how you would define service in the first place, of what that actually is? Because there's loads of nuance there as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So to me, service is an equation that is large part due to the results. But here's the thing. I have specific stories that I can tell you in my own agency. We were doing e-commerce and we had this like 40x ROAS for this specific client, okay? Like around 2021. And we lasted with that client 4 months. They fired us. And they went to somebody else. And 3 months later, I called up the owner and I said, hey, like our results were unbelievable. Why did you drop us? And they said, your account manager took 3 to 5 business days to get back to me no matter what. We were a significant account. We were paying you a lot of money. The service just wasn't there. I'm like, how are the results now? He's like, they're not as good as yours, but they're very profitable. And I would rather take the better service and the better results. Now, this person was a very relationship focused person. They had other businesses. Like this business wasn't going to make or break. And you might say to yourself, it's like, those numbers are insane. And by the way, they were, but it was also like fitness, e-com in a very specific time. So it was booming. Neither here nor there, though. You should never get fired. And the answer was like, our client service was not good enough. We were not responsive enough. And like, this is the following model for service. It's not only results, but it's how you lead the client. And client leadership equals insights. So we need to be delivering insights to the business. And insights I break down into 3 tiers. There's marketing level insights. Marketing level insights look like the data that we're getting back from the campaigns we're running, the creative we're launching, whatever else have you. Business level insights mean the marketing in the scope of the rest of their business. Like, is there opportunity for new products, repositioning of products, amendment? Like, this is not just marketing. Now we're getting into business. And then the third level, which is probably the most important level for client stickiness, is industry level insights. Where does the client's business fit inside of the greater industry? And each one of these 3 types of insights have to have their own cadence. Okay. For example, marketing level insights generally should be had anytime you meet with a client one-to-one, whether that's a weekly meeting or a monthly meeting. And it depends on how much you're pricing, right? Like the higher the price, the more frequent the meeting cadence. The business level insights should be every month. You should have at least one, maybe like a little bit longer if the retainer's a bit smaller. But the industry level insights must be done quarterly at bare minimum. And that's why I really root for a system where we have quarterly strategic reviews. Like not QBRs, not quarterly business reviews, quarterly strategic reviews, which are different. We're planning out the next 3 to 6 months every quarter, and how we're planning for the next 3 to 6 months every single quarter is by analyzing not only the marketing insights, not only the business insights, but also the industry level insights packaged to give the client meaning. And then we tell the client, because of this, here's the opportunity. Here's the 5 steps that we need to take in order to capitalize on this opportunity. And if we capitalize on the opportunity, here is the upside to you, the client. And that's what client leadership looks like from the service, that the insight part of the service equation.
So I want to say it was November 2023, Adweek published an article talking about the fact that they had done this like polling or interview of loads of different brands, and the fact that 60% of them were planning on firing their agency over the course of the next couple of months because they were not strategic enough partners. And your insights component, I think, rings very true in my viewpoint, in that if you're not really guiding the client, the reality is that we make so many assumptions that the client either understands what we do really well, they understand how it is the impact that we are having. We are not having that conversation. We are not guiding the client enough. I mean, you're supposed to be the expert in the room. And we end up trying too much to be friendly with the client and being a peer versus having just one notch above. And not saying that you need to have this like narcissistic, egotistical oriented relationship. Yeah, Exactly. But you do need to have this level of insight because otherwise they're going to go look elsewhere. And it's incredibly vital. And where do you think that that ends up falling short, or why do you think that ends up falling short from the agency mindset and having this conversation with clients, being able to truly lead them?
I think it's because generally as agency owners, we care so much about the end outcome that we just say like, well, if our product's good, if it delivers what we say it does, it's good enough. But what we have to realize is that our clients either A, they probably don't have a CMO. And if they do have a CMO, the CMO wants somebody to like be able to like bounce ideas off of. So they want a peer that they can talk to in that strategic level. So going back to like unpacking service, insights and education are sort of the same thing, right? Like unearthing insights, it's like, great, you've unearthed an insight, but now you need to educate the client on the insight. And that's really where the rubber hits the road, in my opinion. So to me, it's equal parts in terms of onboarding the client and ongoing service. I look at three key pillars. Well, number one is education, of which insights are inside of the education piece. Then there's client experience. And I'm talking about like experience in the traditional sense of like sending them a birthday card, figuring out when their anniversary is and sending them a gift. Like if they cross certain milestones, like send them like an award or a gift or like a, hey, congratulatory thing, like literally just like good feels, right? Buy them their favorite like lunch one day for a monthly meeting that you have with them, like ad hoc, right? Like surprise them. And then it's expectation setting. So like those are the pillars: expectations, experience, and education. The experience one's the simplest one, very often not done these days, by the way, which is very interesting. Expectation setting, all agencies are poor at expectation setting. Not only out of the gate in the first 2 to 3 months, but on an ongoing basis, we are terrible at holding expectations. Again, to your point about we're trying to be really, really nice to people. And by being nice, we're actually not being nice because we end up as yes men.
To ourselves and to them, right? Like it has both sides. It's a double-edged sword for sure. One of the things, and I want to dive into a little bit of a different topic, but one of the things that I also find very important here is like, in order for us to be able to drive these insights and ultimately be able to guide the client, we also have to be able to have the data to be able to drive those insights in the first place. And I also feel like so many agencies avoid the either data collection component. I mean, unless you're a media buying agency, but even on like the brand side, the social side, the creative side, you end up not actually understanding how that, once that piece of creative took flight, what did it actually mean? How did it change the click-through rate for that specific ad campaign that you're not running? How did it change brand sentiment? How did it change NPS scoring? So just understanding these different components. But as we were talking about leading into recording, was that we have three kind of core pillars and issues that come up within agencies. It's data, people systems, and client lifetime value. And so I would like for you to start maybe with talking about what does good in each one of those actually look like in a day-to-day of an agency, and then maybe hit a little bit on the data component that I think is really vital.
I think this is like the foundation, back to your point, right? Like the foundation of this is generally like clients leave us or we are not capturing the price that we need, et cetera. Generally because there's something before it that happens that we're not necessarily doing. And like the number one place that I go look for is actually data. And to me, agency business are not that complex. Like we don't have a bunch of machinery or trucks on the road, blah, blah. We're basically just giant balls of people and systems, right? Like that's what we are. Like those are the two halves of the equation at the end of the day. But like any other business, there's some must-have items. So like, look, if you want to kind of like self-score yourself here at home, these are the dashboards that you require at bare minimum to have a reasonable shot at scaling in a manner that is effective where you mitigate your blind spots, right? Meaning like mitigation of blind spots means being able to catch problems early before they catch the house on fire in a meaningful manner. So to me, there needs to be a dashboard that combines revenue and capacity. So revenue forecast, meaning forecasting current client revenues and forecasting business development revenues, right? And then taking that and creating an estimate of how much of our capacity that's going to entail. So how much capacity do we actually require to fill A, the current ongoing, B, the potential biz dev that is high likelihood. And I consider high likelihood biz dev as 80% plus likelihood to close. Like this means verbal close. This means contract negotiation. It doesn't mean I have good feelings about it. Like the bar's high on 80% because negotiation, can dismantle, and verbal closers, people that don't come through anyway after the fact. So when I say
Yep.
80%, those are really the only two things I consider 80%.
Yeah.
After that, and like, by the way, if you have that dashboard, this is probably one of the most impactful things from a revenue and profitability perspective. Because if you're not overloaded, overload means you're going to burn your team out. If you're underloaded, that means that you're leaving profit on the table and potentially hiring contractors to fill in gaps. And now every single dollar you're paying those external contractors is basically money that's being thrown away because we could have done it internally, right? So it's a very fine balance, and you need good accuracy on this, and it's an iterative process.
100%.
Number two, a sales and marketing dashboard. And the typical stuff as an agency that we know is good. And this is specifically for ourselves corporately. So we need to understand where the leads are coming from, what their costs are, but then also ladder this into things like cost per proposal. What is our actual customer acquisition cost? And if we have the data, which by the way, everybody does, lifetime value versus customer acquisition cost and customer acquisition cost payback period. We need to understand this, because if we are getting deals at a reasonable rate, we should be investing more heavily in advance if these numbers work out. If you have a really good lifetime value versus customer acquisition cost, and your customer acquisition cost is like 3 months or less, like, you should probably be spending more on whatever it is that is generating that kind of result,
Yeah.
right? So that's the second one. The third one, client retention dashboard. So when I talk about client retention, I don't just mean client retention corporately as a whole. We need to be measuring client retention and client churn in the following manners. Number one, nominal client, meaning like number of clients that left versus clients that stayed. Also revenue. So like we have to compare the two, nominal versus revenue. The revenue should always be lower than the nominal. Why? Because if it's lower, it means that we're losing the small clients and we're keeping the big ones. If the revenue percentage is higher than the nominal percentage, that means we're losing the big clients. That's not a good thing, right? Beyond that, though, this report also needs client churn by account manager. And your client account manager, I call them CAMs, like client account manager can be a digital strategist, it can be an account manager. There's so many titles under the sun. But we need to track it by client account manager, because we need to know which client account managers are better than others at retaining clients. And also, if you have a larger sales team of like 2 or more, we also need to track churn by sales representative, because these things can fluctuate and we can see the patterns. Now, I'm going to give you a quick tip. The reason that you want to track it by client account manager is because when a new account comes in, are you going to give the new account to the client account manager that has 8% monthly churn, or to the person that has 2% monthly churn? I know who I'm giving the account to, and as long as they have room and they're willing to accept the work, I'm going to give it to the person with the lower amount of churn, because their client lifetime value is just automatically going to be much, much greater.
What do you also say for, while there may be instances where you have higher churn from a nominal percentage as you're talking about, but also the recognition that they have a whole lot of upsell potential, right? So this person's much better
Upsell
at
offsets.
growth of accounts. Yeah.
Yeah, so like to me, like for example, if somebody loses a 3K account, but they upsell another 2 accounts for like $1,500, for example, that's 0% churn.
Yeah. Okay. Here's the thing that I run into a lot, specifically more on the design side of agencies as well, is that a lot of agency owners end up being very data averse. So we're talking dashboards, which is very much speaking to my personality type. But for a lot of creatives, that is, they see themselves as data averse because they just don't believe that they're good at it. The idea of looking at a spreadsheet, like the faces that I've actually seen when bringing up spreadsheets with clients sometimes, of just like their eyes completely gloss over like the moment that you bring up a spreadsheet, and the idea of needing to do so, and then the like fear of the idea that I don't have the information, I don't have a CRM to track my pipeline, I don't have a this, I don't have a that. What do you say to that person?
Well, I mean, first of all, client churn, for example, can be tracked simply through the financials,
Yeah.
right? Like it's fairly simple. I mean, you don't even need a CRM. You don't need it. Like as long as you're government compliant, you have this data, number one. But from the comfort perspective, like, look, it's like, if you know this isn't your strong suit, you need a strong second in command that is going to take care of this side for you. Like it's the inevitable truth of it all. And I believe that data enables us to flourish from like the strategic creative side, because it gives us like rules to the playground. Like I think all good designers understand that you can't design to infinite possibilities, because when you do, you actually end up with an inferior design rather than having a good brief. It's sort of like, hey, you have no brief, do whatever you want, versus like, here's a very solid brief that allows for like creative ideation, but like tighter, which means that the idea is ultimately going to be better. So
Mhm.
I don't think that creatives look at it this way, but the reality is that constraints actually create better product,
Yep.
right? It's the same thing with data, right? Data shows us it's like instead of trying to like figure out where in the night sky we are, it's like we know which star we need to align and point ourselves to.
So your advice then is that you need to just find someone that is going to be it. But I also find that it's important to not be entirely reliant on the person for the understanding of it. That you still have to have like just a base understanding of it. Like I'm not expecting you to be a CFO or data analyst necessarily, but you do have to have enough of an understanding to look at a report and understand what they mean. So let's say that we are looking at, I'm an agency owner right now. We are talking about the data systems, the people systems, and the client lifetime value. And the thing that I see happen pretty much every single person that I initially talk to is that I have a marketing problem. I need more leads. I need more leads. I need more leads. That's the thing that they're mostly talking about.
Yeah.
And I would say probably more than 50% of the time that actually doesn't tend to be the case, that it actually isn't an initial new logo problem, that it's more, there's a greater systems oriented problem. So how would you go about trying to force rank the actual issue and identify the core of the problem? And where do I need to focus my attention first? Because if I can't focus on 12 things at once, I have to focus on one, try to make improvement there, and then move on to the next. And they can often ladder and impact other ones as well.
Yeah. To me, the core issues are in rank order. Number one, data. Number two, people. Number three, like retention or LTV issue. And it is in that order. The reason is like I said before, agencies are just balls of people and systems. And data is like something that makes data less scary to me is the fact that data to me is just measurement of human behavior. But that's what it is. Like somebody does something, the dashboard captures it. Now we can see what that is. And because of that, we can now coach the individual and guide them so that the next time they do the same thing, it gets better. And so to me, people are the most important thing. But again, having a good brief, like going back to that analogy, having a good brief, like data and your dashboards are like having a good brief so that you can coach your people better.
I find it, to me at least, and me being the data person, that there's just a load of comfort in data. I mean, there's instances, right, where just I don't have enough clarity within the data. We haven't been collecting it long enough for it to be able to make a discernible choice. So I'm still making like a educated guess, if you will. But the more data that you actually have, the more comfortable in a direction that you can ultimately make. And what I see frequently that I suppose is a frustration of mine is that agencies will either make all of their decisions based on gut, or they will have a mistake happen over and over and over and over and over again. And either they do have the data, but are not relying upon it to make a choice to make a change, but are just continuing to live the exact same life and living in Groundhog's Day, if you will,
Yeah.
and then upset about the outcome.
I think that there's like a sort of like a Goldilocks like paradox, right? In data versus like gut feel or emotion or I mean, really it's qualitative, right? You got to marry the two. If you operate purely off of data, it's not going to lead you to the right spot all of the time, right? Especially if you look at the numbers cut and dry.
Sure, there's a story.
Numbers with correct consideration and experience is different because you're taking qualitative aspects and baking them into sort of like the pure logic side, but it's actually not. Like it's just this is the end state, but in its true state, it's data versus like human behavior and like humanity really, and
Yep.
like looking at how the two things interact. So the better that we understand our own people, this is why we got to be good managers and set proper expectations with people, right? And the best way to do that is to create alignment between the two. So like for like prime example, when we are coaching and trying to generate behavior change, it's very important to have a shared language. So for example, if I have a digital strategist, I'm going to tell the digital strategist like that maybe they're client facing and they're actually my account manager. I'm going to be like, look, your top three objectives are client retention, client results, and a reasonable level of productivity. And as long as both you and I are aligned that like those are the top three things that we're inevitably hunting for the benefit of the client, for the benefit of the agency, and for the benefit of you yourself, the individual contributor, because if you hit solid metrics on these three objectives, then the client's going to be happy. You're going to be happy because you're going to get progression. You're going to get potentially promotions. You're definitely going to be able to get raises if you're starting to hit these numbers. Now we've generated alignment between like the data, the behavior that we want from the individual, and what the organization needs in order to be sustainable in the long run. So we need to have like this shared language of like, what are we pulling towards together?
So these are all things that I very much agree with, but I also think that it's just an interesting thing I find, because your team is so incredibly vital in the direction that you're heading. And the reality where a lot of people end up feeling quite disappointed in their team is because they don't have the same expectation. They're not speaking the same language. They don't have a measurable way of determining whether they achieve the outcome. So it ends up being purely subjective on whether they did the thing or they didn't. And then just really clarity on what actually complete looks like for that specific team member. So the agency owner is looking for someone to take something from X to Y and gives them a certain level of authority, at least has it in their head, but never articulates it. But then it makes it impossible for the team member to meet that expectation because they have no idea what it is. They're just shooting in the dark.
To me, there's a very specific recipe, and I'm going to give you the most high-level shorthand on this because it's easy to remember. 3 things need to be present. Number 1, core objectives that have corresponding metrics. So like client retention as measured by client churn. Number 1. You can also add a KPI in there too. That's number 1. Number 2, you need to have like a clarified position of what belongs to management versus what belongs to the frontline employee. So what do we as managers owe the employee? And not only do managers need to know that, the employee needs to know that. So that way we can identify when issues are management issues, where management has not completed their job, versus employee issues, okay? The third one is standard operating procedures and RACI, right? And like, look, funny enough, standard operating procedures and RACI, if you're not familiar with RACI, like ChatGPT it, please use it, like you need it for all your products and services. Managers, part of the checklist of responsibility of the managers in point number 2 is having standard operating procedures, training, RACI, like meaning like who's accountable for this item, who's responsible for this item, who should be consulted, who should be informed. That's what RACI is, right? And you need this for all your services. And if the managers haven't provided that to the frontline employee to generate that clarity, that means that it's not the employee that's actually underperforming. It's that we haven't given the tools to the employee to enable them to succeed.
100%. I mean, I've said this several times. It's that our responsibility as a manager to make sure that the team has the tools and knowledge to perform the job. If they don't, then that's our fault, not theirs. And the clarity as well as to exactly what that actually looks like.
There isn't that many things. That's the funny thing about it. Like a lot of these things seem very daunting, but once you've completed it, like to me, like I actually just have a nine-step checklist that says like if all these 9 things are done by the manager, it's no longer a management issue. Now it's an employee issue, right? And so they seem daunting, like RACI, SOPs, all of these things. But the thing is that we have to realize as managers or leaders, we're not alone. Like we don't have to build everything ourselves. Like we have capable team members. We just need to show them how to do that. So like maybe the first pass is on us, or maybe some of the first passes on us, but the iteration and updates should come bottom up
from them,
from the team.
They have better insights than we do as well because they're actually on the ground level.
Absolutely.
So I have one last question, I suppose, on the data piece. That there's like, I would say 3, as you were talking about the Goldilocks rule, where it's like there's not enough data, there's the right amount of data, and then there's too much data. In the world between the right amount and then too much, where you're spending so much of your time trying to collect information that you may or may not even use. Do you have any guidance on how to recognize whether you've gone too far?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what happens is that I'm going to go back to like objective metric KPI. Like the ultimate point of data is to amend behavior so that we can have like a different reality when things go not the way that we want them to go.
Sure.
So in my opinion, people can only house anywhere between 2 and 4, if you really want to push it, 5 core objectives and core metrics that belong to it, right? In my opinion, I actually believe that the optimal number is 3. Because if you go to somebody and you ask them like, are you doing well? Are you succeeding? They should be able to understand, okay, these are my top 3 objectives. These are the top 3 numbers and like in rank order. And this is how I'm doing because I have visibility to that. Right?
Yep.
If you have that level of clarity, that's enough. I think where people go off on the rails is that they force non-management team members to keep like 10 or 20 numbers in their head. At a leadership level, that's okay. But you need to understand that if you're measuring 20 different numbers, it's because the top 3 among the different roles in the organization are different. So like you get this accumulation of like a lot of them at the end of the day. But even then, like if you look at your billable departments versus your not, like your billable departments should be more the same than they are different on the objective metrics side.
Yep.
Now, sales and marketing is going to have their own set, right? Finance is going to have their own set, right? So there's different departments that are going to have their own set, but there aren't that many of them. And the Goldilocks zone to me is that, well, if you have like, depending on how your agency works, 5 to 7 different areas, this means that you're going to end up with 15 to 20 core metrics that drive the entire business. And you as a leader and as a leadership team, you can get your mind around that. But what I see often is that either people have nothing, right? Or they're like, hey, it's like revenue and profit, like, which is like, they're not even, they're outcomes. They're not even anything else. They're not like things that you can directly affect. You have to affect other things. Or I see situations where one department is carrying like 30 of these. And I'm like, whoa, like, how do people know how well they're doing? You need to assign them by people. And look, when I talk about objective and metric and KPIs, I mean like these need to go into their job description. Like, this is what I mean. Like, it should be in their job description. It should be part of like their weekly meeting with their manager. We should be reviewing these once a month when the dashboards come out. So some metrics and KPIs are going to be weekly. Some of them are going to be monthly. And when the dashboards come out, we should be reviewing them in our next one-to-one with the individual. We should also be reviewing these things at our leadership team meeting with very specific feedback loops. Hey, there's a problem. Who owns this number? Oh, you own this number? Go figure out why it's off. Next leadership team meeting. Tell us why it's off and tell us what the steps are to fix it. And by what estimated date the gap in the number will be fixed. That's closing the loop. And what happens in between that leadership team meeting and the next one is you went to the individual contributor and or your team, you figured out what the issue was, and you provided corrective behavior change in order to make it so that they're iterating towards the reality of fixing that gap in the numbers.
So we've hit on a lot of conversation today in being able to start to identify the areas within people, data, and client lifetime value. And I know that you have some trainings and some tools that the listeners can take from the learnings today, the theory that we have today, and actually turn them into action. Can you share a little bit about what those are?
Yep. So I'm going to be leaving behind 2 items. Number 1 is a 8-figure agency operations, like high level, where it goes over the top 5 things that suck out profit and scale. So like by fixing these 5 things, generally you're going to generate more profit and scale. And it also has baked into it what I use as a master dashboard and the list of KPIs and metrics that I use in my own agencies. So like you can just like copy paste these and marry them with the master dashboard that's in there, along with the what I call the 5 killers of scale and profit. That's number 1. You can use those right away, unpackage them, and like apply them. It's straightforward. There's videos there on how to do it along with the resources. Number 2, generally people say, yeah, but how do I actually get the time to do this? Right? Because it's like we're all busy, right? So the second thing I'm leaving behind is I actually have a training. There's 5 hours worth of training inside of it. And again, time, I get it. But the whole purpose of that second item is how to make your agency more self-running. And it's in fact the exact process that I use. I work in my business less than 4 hours a week. I work on my business as much as I want, but I'm only required for about half a day, right? So this is the exact same process that I used to go from working, frankly, 60 to 80 hours a week, which is kind of like, it was way too much. Yep. These are the exact processes and systems that I used to be able to delegate to this level, to like basically unchain myself from my own desk. So both of those things I'm leaving behind.
Awesome. I'll make sure to include the links for both of those in the show notes, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today, Nick. Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening in today. With all of the shifts in the industry, it is easy to feel overwhelmed or unsure of your next move. So I'm not here to try to sell you anything. I just want to give back and guide you through the uncertainty. Whether you're navigating new trends or just need some clarity, we're here to listen and offer advice. Head to creativeagencysuccess.com/chat to book a free 50-minute chat with an agency mentor who can provide you with a fresh perspective. Let's figure out the best steps for your agency's growth together.